Hello and welcome to today's lesson where we're looking at Edgar Schein's organizational culture model. Now, you will sometimes see this model referred to as the cultural triangle, or the three levels of culture model, or even the iceberg model. And in simple terms, the model can be used to help you understand and then shape an organization's culture. It's common for an organization's leaders to claim a culture of X or a culture of Y. And while there may be some culture shared across the whole organization, the real culture of an organization exists within small teams or sets of people within that organization. These sets of people have usually worked together for some time and have a shared history of successfully overcoming problems. So culture ultimately comes about through the behavior of individuals. Schein defines culture as everything an organization has learned throughout its history. Culture isn't just how people feel, it's also how people think about and respond to things as a group. Now, Schein actually gives a much more nuanced definition of organizational culture than the one I've just given, which you can see here. And because it's a little bit more complex, feel free to pause the video and read this a few times to help it sink in. So he defines organizational culture as a pattern of shared basic assumptions that are invented, discovered, or developed by a given group as it learns to cope with the problems of external adaptation and internal integration that have worked well enough to be considered valid, and therefore is to be taught to new members of the group as the correct way to perceive, think, and feel concerning those problems. So with that, let's take a look at the model. It's a tool that can help you understand an organization's culture. The model says that there are three different layers to every organizational culture. At the top, we have artifacts, which sit on top of values, which sit on top of assumptions. It helps to think of this as an iceberg, where the artifacts are the most visible part. And just like an iceberg, only about 10% of organizational culture is easily visible. So let's examine each of the levels in a little bit more detail. So first, artifacts. These are those elements of culture that are easy for outsiders to the organization to observe. So they're the visible organizational structures and processes. Although artifacts can be easy to see, they can be hard to decipher. So, for example, suppose you're looking at an organization and seeing its organizational structure. You can see it quickly, but it's hard to interpret why it is the way it is and what that means at a deeper level. To really make sense of artifacts, you must dig deeper, and that leads us to values. So, suppose you have an organizational structure as your artifact. Beneath that, you'll have a set of values that caused you to set up this structure in the first place. So values, often referred to as espoused values, are harder to see than artifacts. They are the strategies, goals, and philosophies declared and endorsed by the organization. These are the reasons why the organization chooses to do things in a certain way, and it's why one particular artifact might look the way it does. So finally, at the bottom of the pyramid, we have the organization's assumptions. These are the unconscious beliefs that people within the organization hold to be true, but without ever challenging, testing, or verifying them for themselves. Because assumptions are unwritten and usually unspoken, they can be challenging to ascertain, and you'll unlikely discover them quickly. You can think of assumptions as the foundation or cause of the other parts of the pyramid above. So here's a simple 5-step process you can use to apply Schein's model. So step 1, focus on a specific business problem. Step 2, engage a group to find out what's causing the problem. Step 3 is to create the right environment. 4 is to specify the change goal. And finally, 5 is to build a change program to rectify. So let's walk through each of the steps. So for step 1, so culture only really matters when there's a problem. Much like your personality only matters if there's a problem. If your organizational culture is adaptive and can change automatically to new internal and external realities, then you don't have a problem and you don't need to fix your culture. But if you do have a problem, The first step is to spell out the problem as specifically and precisely as you can. Step 2 is to engage a group. Now, culture exists in groups, as we've said, so this step involves getting a group of your people together who can get to the bottom of what's causing your business problem. In this step, you'll use the culture model to understand how the different levels of culture apply to your specific problem. Step 3 is to create the right environment. So to ensure your group has the best chance of getting to the root of the problem, create a safe space for their discussions. Anything someone says in the group discussion should not be used against them later. It should be a safe place to speak your mind, question the status quo, speak up to managers, and play devil's advocate. Step 4 is to specify the change goal, and you can do this by answering the question, what would behavior look like a year from now if we solved this problem? Answering this question will help you move away from understanding your problem and towards thinking about how to solve your problem. And finally, step 5 is to build a change program to rectify. So now that you're clear on where you're going, it's time to put together a plan to make it happen. Now, the change program should include steps like getting senior management on board and targeting quick wins so you can start to see results and build momentum quickly. Your change program doesn't need to be huge in scale. It simply needs to fix your business problem. So let's work through the steps for a straightforward example. So step 1 is to focus on the specific business problem. So for this example, we're going to imagine an organization that believes its overall sales are suffering because its individual salespeople are working against each other. Step 2, we're going to engage a group to find out what's causing the problem. So you put together a focus group consisting of multiple salespeople and several of their managers. Using Schein's model, you investigate the problem and see that, at an artifact level, salespeople undercut each other to win a bonus over their colleagues. Now that's beneficial to the individual, but detrimental to the organization. At a values level, you see that competition is encouraged between salespeople. And in fact, their entire reward structure is set up to support this. Sales managers are also rewarded based on the total value of sales, not collaboration. And finally, at the assumptions level, you find that the organization's founder set things up the way they are currently based. And he did that based on the assumption that individuals perform best when they stand to win from their actions. Step 3 is to create the right environment. And to do this, you not only allow people to speak freely, but you consider allowing people to make mistakes as you move into a new way of working. Step 4 is to specify the change goal. And you specify the salespeople behavior 1 year from now to be salespeople work collaboratively to create the best outcome for themselves and the organization. And finally, the final step is to build a change program to rectify. Now, it's outside the scope of this video to show you how to do this, but some simple steps you could take might include creating a simple system allowing the first salesperson that receives a customer inquiry to be the one that gets the commission. Doing that's going to stop your salespeople from undercutting each other. You could also change your bonus structure so it doesn't solely focus on what was achieved, but also on how it was achieved. Now, before we wrap up, there are a couple of advantages and disadvantages of Schein's model to cover. In terms of advantages, then the model provides a mechanism or lens to think about and frame organizational culture. It also encourages you to think more deeply about culture by breaking culture down into 3 levels. In terms of disadvantages, there's no one definition of organizational culture, so the model that works best for you will likely depend on what culture means to you. Finally, individuals drive culture. So what you think is a cultural problem may just be an issue with one or a few individuals. So in summary, Edgar Schein's culture model is a tool that can help you understand organizational culture. And from that, you can shape organizational culture. The model says that there are 3 different layers to every organizational culture. At the top, we have artifacts, which sit on top of values, which sit on top of assumptions. So that's it for this lesson. Really hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.